Hey dudes, what is going on and welcome to another video. In this video I'm going to go over things, not super in depth, but I'm just going to sort of give my opinion on a few things. You don't have to agree with me, that's fine, everyone's entitled to their own opinion, and everybody likes their own things, but I'm going to go over what we've had in Battlefield 2042 so far to go off of and give my take on it. But before I do that, I want to say thank you to the dudes in the last video who I actually managed to help with having the same problem I did with their Tartarus or their steering wheel not allowing them to play Battlefield 2042. A lot of you sent me some really good messages and it was good to see, but most of all I'm really glad that I could help. You get a pretty good laugh out of that video too, because apparently I tilted a lot of people. I had one half that were complaining that the video was too long despite it was a whole 2 minutes 30, and not to mention I literally pinned a comment that I'd put on there to show how to do the fix without actually having to watch the video if you didn't want to watch the video. But apparently people still wanted to watch the video just so they could complain about it. And the other half are angry little kids that are trying to run the game on a PC that's basically a toaster with USB ports, and somehow that's my fault. So I make a video on how to fix an input problem that there was, and it did fix it for quite a lot of people. Or at least allowed them to play the game properly anyway. But somehow we're going to blame poor old Instinct for not being able to make our game run on a potato with USB ports. But that's okay. Keep smashing the dislike button. You clearly don't understand how the YouTube algorithm works. So just to be clear before I get into this one, because apparently people can't read the time at the bottom of the video, this is going to be a lengthy one. Everything that I say in this video is going to be opinion based and with the knowledge that I have to go off of. Not going to be some super in-depth video that's going to be over in 30 seconds flat. We're going to start with the visuals of the game. A lot of people are saying it looks terrible. I don't think it does. It looks pretty good to me. There's some things in it that aren't polished yet, but what do you expect? They probably just got the game to a stable state where people would be able to play it for the beta. But I've seen comments on other people's videos saying that it looks worse than Battlefield 3, and I don't know where they're getting that from because it definitely doesn't look like that at all. There has been a lot of performance issues apparently. I haven't had them myself, but I know people that I play with and they've had them. Random frame rate drops, lockups altogether, and just constant low FPS. I can't say that I'm experiencing that either, but I've had enough people tell me it that I believe it. Again though, it is a beta and it's subject to change on release, or at least one would hope so. Little details in the game, as pointless as it may be, the lights can be shot out in the tunnel, which I thought was pretty cool. I guess it's to be expected in this day and age, but there's still a lot of people that haven't really noticed. Not only can the bushes be broken, but they can also be pushed into the ground by the downforce of the helicopter. Again, it's nothing crazy, but it's a little detail that I like to see in games. As far as destructibility goes, it's not as good as it could be, but it may not be finished yet. It's good enough, like you can destroy enough stuff and blow up enough walls that there is actual destructibility there. But there's definitely been Battlefield titles where they've had more destructibility. As for the sounds for the in-game, I think the best way to experience the sounds is if I just darken the screen and you just listen. It's even better if you have a headset on. Okay, so the atmosphere around you at all times in this game sounds amazing. The dynamic weather for the map, i.e. the hurricane, is quite good. Visually it looks amazing. The only thing that I have to nitpick with it, and probably grasping at straws at this point, is I wish it was a little bit more destructive. Like yeah, it can pick things up and it can move them around, it can kind of throw you up in the air and stuff like that, but I feel like it should do a lot more damage to things around it. Like with the helicopters and stuff like that, yeah, it does draw you towards it, but it's hardly a challenge to get away from. It's quite easy to get away from it still. Whereas I don't imagine flying a helicopter in a hurricane would be a great idea. As for the rocket was really cool, and honestly I feel like they kind of chose the map purely based on the rocket just to give that bit of a wow factor, but the problem is, one of those things, once you've seen it once or twice and you've grappled to it, you kind of don't care anymore. Like yeah, it's cool that it's there, but it's like it's hardly going to make it my favourite map. What do I think about the UI? The UI is pretty much exactly what I expected it to be, very similar to previous titles before, very bright and in your face for like the more modern style shooters they make. But I've had a few friends that I work with come up to me and say that it seems way too bright, which I made the counter argument. I think it's just because the last couple titles have been like older and more gritty, so you're not used to seeing all those bright colours in your face. So I kind of think that's a bit of the factor there. Now as for the layout of it, I don't really like it. It's too much in your face. Like what is it with game developers these days and thinking I need 151 different icons on my screen at once, that half of them don't even dissipate when I'm trying to aim at someone behind them and then I end up getting shot because I can't see the person that's behind said icon. I think it'd benefit from a little bit less. Sometimes less is more. It's not bad or anything like that, I just think it's a little bit too busy. There's too much going on. Like I don't need a panel down in the bottom right corner that has every single detail of every single gadget that I've got, and it takes up like 1/8 of my screen. And again, as I said, I don't need 151 icons telling me where every single teammate is, every single point is. I know where the points are, and if I didn't know, I'm going to learn them eventually. Server stability, it seems pretty good for a Battlefield beta, but it's still not great. Like every so often you see a helicopter drifting through the air, or you see Tokyo Drift jets going around the place. For the most part it has been pretty stable though, I will say that. Or at least in my experience it has been. I haven't seen nothing insane. What's my thoughts on sectors? Now, I do like the sector idea, and I do like how some of the sectors have 2 points that you have to capture. If you only have one and the enemy have the other, it seems to bring it to a stalemate type deal. But you have to have both to control the sector. I do like that. I think that's quite cool. Like, it'd be a bit much if it was on every single one, but I think they've hit the nail on the head pretty good by having it on only some of them. I'm sure there'll be maps where there's none at all, and I'm sure there'll be maps where there's more, but I think they've got a really good thing going there, because it brings a lot of big close quarters combat, and I'm a big fan of that. I think that's the basics handled. Now let's get into a bit more of the meat. And let's start off with movement. What I think about the movement in general, I think the movement feels really, really good. Like some games you'll play them and you'll be sprinting and it feels like you're barely moving any faster than you was when you was walking. But it's not like that with this, it's really smooth. There's not too much drift when you're tilting from side to side while aiming or anything like that makes it really difficult to aim. It feels very crisp and exactly how it should. However, they have sort of brought some advanced movement dynamics to it, and I am a fan of advanced movement, don't get me wrong. I just don't think it needs to be implemented quite the way they've done it. Like you've got the slide, which I have no problem with the slide. The slide's fine. The problem that I do have with it though is they've attempted to put a cooldown on it that you can bypass by jumping. And for some of the heavier weapons in the game that are supposed to like encumber you, make you a bit heavier because obviously they're a bigger weapon, you can actually bypass the weight of them by sliding. That's something that I hope they address at some stage. Of course, you've got the vaulting system too. Vaulting is good in this game. It's not super slow, so you're not going to get peppered while you're climbing over something or anything like that. Ladder climbing isn't very slow, so you're probably not going to get peppered going up a ladder as long as it's small. Obviously, you run the risk if it's a bigger ladder. The ground vehicles move around pretty well. The lighter vehicles are very agile and handle the terrain quite well as well. Tanks handle exactly how you'd expect a tank to handle. Tanks, of course, are a little bit stiffer. That's exactly how you would expect a tank to steer. But they are quite fast, which I'm a fan of because tanks aren't as slow as what some people seem to think, and in this particular title, they're definitely no exception. The helis are insane as far as movement-wise goes, even the bigger ones. It was a little bit strange when I first picked it up, and I think a lot of other people are having the same problem because I see a lot of helis crashing or flying upside down. But I realised I was fighting the helis a lot, like I was oversteering too much. And once you stop fighting them, they're actually quite good to use. They're very, very agile. You can get in and out of a firefight with them and absolutely no problem at all. You can dodge free fire rockets really easy. They're very agile. Now as for the jets, I feel like the jets are more catered towards people with a flight stick in general. Nothing particularly works very bad on them or anything like that. It's just when you go to turn, you have to swipe your mouse like 8 times. So what I'll do if I have a big arc turn to make with a jet is I simply switch over to the arrow keys on the keyboard rather than using the mouse, and that seems to make the difference. Game size for Conquest is 128 and that feels pretty damn awesome. Like, you don't notice it for the most part. Like, you'd think there'd be so much more people around at all times than there actually is. But for the most part, it's still squad versus squad. And then obviously the points of interest have got a lot of people on them. However, when there's a big team battle over one of the points, it's amazing. There is people everywhere, and there's just so much going on. Now I'm going to go over squads a little bit here for a second and just kind of give my ideas and thoughts on that. Squads are still 4-man, and that kind of bugs me a little bit. I think that they should bring it up to 5. Like, I feel like the original reason for it being 4 was because there was only 4 classes, but the classes aren't really a problem anymore because anyone can carry ammo, anyone can carry a repair tool, anyone can carry the health packs. So I think upping it to 5 wouldn't hurt because when I play, usually I've got a 5th person that has to sit out and that doesn't feel real good. And I don't know why, but 4 just seems like a weird number to have for a squad. So I'd like to see that come up to 5. The other problem I have with it is no separate colours for your squad mates. Another problem that I have with it is there's still no separate colours for squad mates. It seems like a little thing to pick at, but if you've ever played with a squad and you know that they're terrible at callouts, they just give you the whole callouts, he's here or he's there. And it's like, yeah, cool. I've got to look around and see which one of my teammates it is and try to get them by name, not by colour or anything like that to see who they are. So different colours, like one be yellow, one be red, one be blue, one be green, that'd be fine. Now we're going to talk a little bit about the specialists, the ones that are available at the moment anyway. First up you have McKay. He's your typical assault push style character. McKay comes with the grapple hook, and we're going to get into the specialist items a little bit later, but he also has a passive ability as well, and his passive is called Nimble. It allows him to move faster while he's aiming, and it also allows him to move faster up zip lines. Your second specialist is Boris. He's the engineer style character. Boris comes with an SG-36 sentry turret. Now the way this sentry turret works is you place it down and it'll put down a circle on the ground. If you stay within the circle, the turret is much more effective. If you move away from it, it becomes less effective. Next we have Casper. Casper is your recon style character. He comes with an OPV recon drone. He also has a ghillie suit that's equipped with a sensor, which is called the sensor suit, but that's absolutely no fun at all, so I like to call it the dibber dobber suit. Valk is your support style character, carrying the S21 Siret pistol, and had the passive for combat surgeon, which allows you to revive people that aren't in your squad to full health. So if you want to be useful to the team, a really good pick. Now we're going to get into the specialist items a little bit. You'll remember earlier I said that McKay comes with a grapple hook. If you've played the game already, you already know that. I feel like the grapple hook, when I first heard about it, I didn't really like the idea of it, but the way that they've used it is pretty bang on the money. It's not just some button you can press and away you go. It has a good cooldown, and you actually have to hold the item in your hands, which means that you're vulnerable to being shot while holding it. That being said, you're still nimble enough to be able to use it and make some really cool plays. I've seen a lot of people on TikTok debating people with it. I've seen people tethering themselves to vehicles. Tim the Tap Man even managed to pull someone out of a helicopter with it, but mostly people are just tethering themselves to the rocket with it because why not? As mentioned earlier, Boris comes with the SG-36 sentry turret. My only problem with this sentry turret is how quickly it recharges and the fact that you can just pick it up and move it. It feels like one of those things that honestly it should be only one per squad, because if you get a squad of sweats that are pushing around with these things and they're just shoving them down everywhere, although they're not incredibly dangerous, if you get enough of them in one area and you've got people actually boosting them as well, because that's Boris's passive, they're going to be a bit of a problem. Not to mention they're going to be spotting you as well, which then you have to contest with the player knowing where you are already. The OPV recon drone of Casper's. If anyone got stooged here with their actual item, I think it's Casper. But the recon drone, while it is cool and it does come equipped with the EMP, and you can use it to scout a little bit ahead of you, it just feels like it's a little underpowered compared to what other people have. I'm not saying it's underpowered in general, I'm saying compared to what other people have, he feels like he got ripped off a little bit. You can strap C4 to it and make your own version of an RCXD, so that's very nice. Now the S21 Siret pistol. Valk comes equipped with this pistol, and basically what it is, you remember Doc from Rainbow Six Siege? It's that. The difference is it doesn't overboost your health, but you can heal allies around you with it, and you can heal yourself of course. It's not ridiculously quick, so it's not overpowered when you're healing yourself. The only thing that I think is a problem with it is it has a lot of uses. I think it needs maybe half of what it has. Now let's get into the weapons and gadgets side of things. Up first you have the PBX-45, it's basically supposed to be the UMP. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure that's the case. It's a pretty solid close to medium quarters SMG. A reasonable rate of fire and not a lot of recoil allows you to beam heads off pretty easily with it. So if you want a gun that's pretty good at close quarters but not completely useless at medium range, then the PBX is a pretty good pick. Up next we have the K30, which is basically supposed to be the Vector. Now for the longest time I've been the biggest fan of Vectors. Vectors are amazing, and this one is no exception. You chuck a silencer, a red dot sight, and the extended mag in this thing, it is an absolute laser beam. You'll be super agile with it still. If you want to play like a sweaty Warzone player, slide cancelling everywhere you go with this thing, this is the gun for you. If you're ducking and diving in and out of cover and you get behind a squad, they're dead before they even get a time to react. This thing is an absolute monster. As far as for our ARs go, we've got the AK-24 and we've got the M5A3. The AK-24 is your typical AK, hits like a brick, a little bit of recoil, and a decent rate of fire. From what attachments we have in the game to play with at the moment, the AK-24, it's alright, it doesn't feel insane or anything like that though. Enter the M5A3. Decent rate of fire, good accuracy, low recoil, and unlike the AK, it can come with an underbarrel grenade launcher. Some guns I like to explain as a machete. They're only really good at one thing, and that's what they do best. The M5A3 on the other hand is more like the Swiss Army knife. Not particularly good at one thing, but good at a little bit of everything. If you just want to pick up the game and play casually, this is the gun for you. You can do pretty much whatever you want. You could be a sweaty nerd, or you can just casually play. It has the most imaginative name in the world as the LCMG, but I've renamed it to the LCM bar. This is one of those guns that it feels like the attachments, some of the attachments, make it worse than what it is when it's standard. It's pretty good at range, a moderate rate of fire. I feel like it's lacking a little bit in the damage area for what it's supposed to be, but for the type of game it is, LMGs never seem to perform the way they should. And I'm not really sure why, but the ACOG on this gun seems to make the recoil perform really strange. Like I've seen a video on TikTok of this guy shooting someone in the head with it like 8 times and it's just not registering. So I don't know whether it's inaccurate or it actually messes with the gun, but I've noticed there's been times where I've tried to track someone with it and it looked like it's been pretty bang on the money, but the recoil is just all over the place compared to where it's actually aimed. But if you go iron sights or red dot sight with this thing, it is an absolute laser beam. Like, it's got no recoil. It has got a movement penalty, it slows you down a little bit, but I don't think it's enough because at this point it's basically a giant AR. I'd like to see them up the damage for it a little bit and give a bit more of a movement penalty. The way I think LMG should perform is they're a suppressive weapon that does a lot of damage, but I don't think you should be sprinting around with them, especially not when the slide cancel allows you to run faster than what you're supposed to be able to with it. And that brings us to the marksman rifle. Oh boy. I don't even really know if I have anything nice to say about the DM7. I am a marksman rifle fan, but this thing doesn't feel like a marksman rifle to me. It doesn't even feel like a battlefield gun to me. It feels like it's been ripped straight from Apex, to be honest. For me, what a marksman rifle is supposed to do is it's supposed to bridge the gap between an AR and a sniper rifle. The DM7 doesn't feel like it does that for me. It is mildly satisfying to get headshots with, but I don't know what's about it, it just feels so stiff. I feel like it'd be a different story if we had a couple more attachments to play with, but obviously we don't have that many to deal with at the moment, so I can only give my opinion based on what attachments we have, and at the moment it literally feels like a gun from Apex. Every single time I aim down sight on it, I'm picturing Apex. Every single time I fire, I'm picturing Apex. Every time I hit somebody or break an armor plate, I'm picturing Apex. So hopefully the other attachments make it a bit more usable, or at least the other marksman rifles that have been in the game, hopefully they're a little bit more usable. Now the SWS-10 is a bolt action sniper rifle. And then this one's got me a little bit torn because I like a good sniper rifle. However, if you've been around for more than the length of a sneeze with Battlefield, you know one of the biggest problems is snipers. And I don't mean they're insanely overpowered all the time or anything like that. But what I mean is you can be going to an objective trying to push it and you can see half your team out on the hills having a picnic with a sniper rifle. But the SWS is quite quick for what it is. It seems pretty low damage. Now I'm a big fan of there being a skill curve to games, and that's how it feels with the SWS. If you can't hit heads with it, it seems like you're not going to have a very good time. I've seen videos of people getting hit 3 or 4 times before they die with this thing. It one-shots heads and it's very satisfying to get headshots with. Its bolt speed is good, its ADS speed is good, its reload speed's not bad. But there's the part of me that says that you shouldn't have to shoot anybody more than twice with a sniper rifle, regardless. But on the other hand, there hasn't been a whole lot of people using the sniper rifle, so maybe they did this to punish people, because there's also no marksman bonus for the sniper rifle, so it almost seems like they're trying to edge people out of playing with the sniper rifle as much. So on the one hand, you've got me annoyed because, as I said, I like a good sniper rifle, it's satisfying and fun to use. On the other hand, you've got me kind of happy that people are actually starting to play with the other guns. They're starting to push the objectives more, they've got a reason to. But I'm not sure whether the marksman bonus thing is intended or not. It might very well be fixed when the game's out. I guess we'll have to wait and see. But for the most part, it almost feels like a marksman rifle. Like, it feels like what the DM7 should feel like. It feels way more agile than what the DM7 does. It feels cleaner to use. It feels crisp. It feels like a gun that they've actually spent some time with, apart from the damage. That brings us to our last primary weapon, which is the MCS 880 Nerf gun, as I call it. It's not a shotgun, it's a Nerf gun. But before I get into it, I want to make mention of it's under utility, it's not under shotguns, so this class could very well have things like crossbows, maybe a compound bow or something similar like that. I feel like we're going to get other weapons that aren't exclusively shotguns put in this tier, if you will. But back to the MCS 880 shotgun. No choke, no long barrel, relatively disappointing damage all round. At close range with a shotgun, I expect to one-hit people. Simple as that. And I'm not a shotgun player. I don't like shotguns. I'm forever swearing at people using shotguns when I play games, especially if I'm getting shot in the back with them. But I am under the impression that getting shot with a shotgun at close range, you should be dead. And then you think, okay, so maybe I'll use the slugs. Maybe I can do a little bit of slug sniping, or maybe I can just hit people at like sort of lowish to medium range and one-tap them. And yeah, you can if you hit them in the head. But if you hit them in the body, be prepared to hit them 2 or 3 times. And you don't have an ACOG for it in the beta. I guess they didn't really want people slug sniping, but it's just put the shotgun in the really weird spot because it doesn't feel like it fits this map. It feels like, yet again, they chose the worst possible map to showcase their game on. They really did. I feel like they chose it completely off the rocket factor just to wow people. But as I said, it's one of those things, you see it once or twice, grapple to it once, you're over it. It's not worth showcasing your entire game on that one map. But it's pretty much put the shotgun into a useless category when there's so many more better picks. Now let's get on to the secondaries. You got the G57, which is a Glock platform style pistol, and I don't know if anyone noticed, but it actually had more attachments on day 1 of the beta than it does now, and they removed them. It comes in semi-auto, but if you tap your fire rate key, then it's 3-round burst. You're not going to one-tap people with it, but it's not intended to be that way. It's just a solid little reliable sidearm. And then enter the M44 revolver. Now I'm a big revolver fan, but I can't tell whether I'm a fan of this revolver. It hits like a train, but it's as slow as a corpse. You can use an ACOG style sight for it, which allows you to snipe people with it. It does have really good damage, don't get me wrong. But every single time you take a shot, it's got incredible recoil because it's a 44. And not only that, your character's got to draw the hammer back every single time, which just makes it too slow. If someone's rushing at me and I'm out of ammo, that's the reason I'm using my secondary. And I'm pretty much going to try to barrel stuff them with my secondary if that's the case. Now this doesn't really work with the revolver. You kind of got to draw people into your lines and hope for that juicy one tap, because chances are you're not getting a second shot. By the time he cocks the hammer back, you're dead. So I feel like this weapon, it just isn't practical as a secondary, at least not for me. Maybe they'll make it a challenge gun, like you have to use it to get a certain amount of kills or a certain amount of headshots over a distance to unlock something, I don't know. And considering every other player's running around with the Glock as well, then I'm gonna guess that other people are feeling the same way. Moving on to your throwables, first up we have a frag. We know what a frag is, you throw it, blow shit up, it's not that hard. And for the most part they're pretty good. Our other throwable is a proximity sensor. Pretty simple, you throw it on the ground and it reveals the enemy location nearby, within a certain distance of course. A simple easy throwable that has a decent place in the game. So we'll move straight on to gadgets. Now for the gadgets they've moved on to a little bit different than what they've done in the past. Now anybody can have pretty much any gadget they want. So you're a sniper and you want to carry ammo, no problem. You're a machine gunner that wants to carry health packs to help your team, no problem. Yes, anyone can carry any gadget now, it doesn't seem to be exclusive. For the medic box, it's just a simple box that you throw on the ground, there'll be a ring, you walk through the ring, you get healed, simple as that. Ammo box, pretty much the same exact thing except with ammo. You throw it on the ground, there's a ring, run through it, you get ammo. Our next gadget is a C5, basically just a C4 that you can throw. They need to turn the range on this thing down. You can throw it so far. It is insane. Like, I don't want it to just drop at your feet or anything like that, but you should not be able to throw it like 30 feet. And you can throw this thing a good distance, especially if you're from a raised platform. Damage of it seems pretty much on par with every other throwable sticky detonation device they've had. Good for getting rid of tanks. Next we have the recoilless M5 launcher, which is just your typical free fire launcher, somewhat fast projectile speed, free fired explosive device. There's not really much more to say about it than that. However, we have its counterpart, the FXM-33 anti-air missile launcher. This single piece of equipment may be one of, if not the most annoying thing inside the game. The reason it's so annoying is because it's a locking anti-air launcher. Basically, just aim it at a flying vehicle, wait till they panic, pop their flares when it locks, just keep tracking them, keep it locked, fire it, and goodbye helicopter. Oh, he dodged that one? Well, no worries, because he doesn't reload them. He just throws it on the ground, pulls out another one virtually straight away, and then you just relock and fire again. It's not a slow process. This thing fires really quick. I don't think people should be able to carry 3 of them for a start, much less everybody in the squad being able to have one. I think these are the sort of things that need limiting, because if not, they need some sort of nerf, or at least in my opinion, they need some sort of nerf. The old faithful repair tool. Now, I don't know if this is a bug or it's intended, but for some reason, with the repair tool, you're not getting points, or at least I wasn't getting points when I was repairing stuff. I don't really like this. I like the idea of everyone being able to carry it, but I don't like the idea of it not giving points, because it's already hard enough to get repaired by random people, and now if they're not even going to get points for it, they're just not going to carry it. There's no point. Unless you're one of those people that really wants to play and help the team, then there's no real reason to carry it. You're not going to get points for repairing, so if you're going for points and trying to top the leaderboard, there's no point. An interesting addition with the next gadget is the IBS armor plates. Now, where have I seen this animation before? There's not a tremendous amount to say about it. You tap your gadget bar, you put in an armor plate. It's not really a long process. It gives you an extra bit of protection. Not insane or anything overpowered. It'll save you from maybe one more DM7 shot. That's about it. Now let's move on to attachments. We're going to start with talking about the drop-down menu. The on-the-fly attachment system. Now, the on-the-fly attachment system, I'm not really sure how I felt about this one. I don't know how many times I've took an ACOG and wished I had a red dot sight, and I don't know how many times I've took a red dot sight or similar and needed a little bit more range. Well, now that's not a problem, because you just pull down your wheel, swap as you go. And I was really surprised. I was expecting it to be really cumbersome and a pain in the ass in general to use. I was expecting it to be similar to the looting style in Firestorm, but it's not like that at all. It works really well. Now, as far as sights go in the game, we don't have a lot to play with at the moment, but if you go to the settings and you look at all the different types, scope sensitivities and general zoom sensitivities available, it's a pretty safe bet to say that the game is going to have a lot of sights. Now in the beta, everything's already unlocked pretty much. So if they do a progression system, I want it to be weapon bound, not level bound. I don't want to be just leveling up to unlock stuff and have like everything for a gun I've never even touched. Hopefully the way it works is if I use this gun, I get attachments for it just like the days of old. As far as barrel attachments go, you've got suppressor, compensator, that typical deal. One of the big problems I have had and have before with Battlefield titles is the way suppressors work. I think we're in a day and age where we can ditch the low velocity bullets from the suppressor, and the damage reduction, I don't think it really needs to be a thing. I play a fair bit of shooters and I've played quite a few tactical ones where the suppressors perform the way that they should, and it doesn't make them insanely overpowered or anything like that. Feel free to have them so they don't reduce recoil or anything like that. Make that the trade-off for using a suppressor, but when you've got a marksman or a sniper rifle and you can't can't use a suppressor on it properly without accounting for 50,000 miles more drop, or when you put it on the LMG and it literally does not change the sound of the LMG, it seems pretty pointless. As far as your mag attachments go, some guns you're capable of changing the rounds in them, whether it be armor piercing style rounds, or it literally changes the caliber of round it fires to make it lower recoil, i.e. the M5. It looks like there's going to be a few different attachments as far as mags go that you can play around with. There doesn't seem to be any crazy extended mags or anything like that, which I think is probably a pretty good thing. Otherwise there probably wouldn't be a point to having LMGs. One thing that's worth a mention is it's pretty safe to say there's going to be other things like master key style underbarrel attachments, because the M5 already has the underbarrel launcher. Now we'll try to quickly touch on the vehicles and get through them. I'm not going to do both sides because yes, they are different vehicles for some of them. I'll mention their names, but I'm not going to show both of them on the screen. There's no real point. They do the same thing. It's mostly visual differences, honestly. For your ground vehicles, both teams start off with a scout vehicle, which is the LAT V4 recon vehicle. My description for the LAT V4 would be basically, it's what I'd imagine would happen if Elon Musk started making warthogs. It's relatively fast and scours over the terrain with absolutely no problem whatsoever. It's fairly nimble and it comes with a machine gun. What isn't to love about that? Which is basically an anti-infantry / anti-air support vehicle. It's got decent armor, it's reasonably quick, handles the terrain decently, and it comes equipped with an anti-air locking missile, because of course it does. And of course a smoke screen for when you need to back out of a firefight, or you're just generally taking too much damage. There's not really much more to say about it than that. Now for your main battle tanks, Russia has the T-28, and on the US you have the M1A5. It's basically potato. As I said, most of the differences are visually. It's a heavy armored vehicle, we know what a tank is, it rolls in, it blows shit up. It comes equipped with a cannon that'll blow a hole in an elephant's ass, and a secondary machine gun that'll be perfect for any horde night on zombies. One thing that I'll mention about it is the secondary gunner seat for your passenger is absolutely terrible. As it seems to be with a lot of the passenger operated guns on this game, it's like the screen you're using to target things, it hasn't got image stabilization essentially. So if I'm moving, which you're not going to be doing a lot of moving while shooting anyway if you're using it the way it's intended, but if you do have to back up in a panic because people are trying to see for you, your passenger's going to have a really hard time trying to shoot anything, and one of my passengers actually complained with the shaking was making him feel sick. Basically, you're moving along a reasonably smooth road. Although I don't picture a tank to be exactly a smooth ride, I don't picture it to be like someone's carpet bombing your tank over and over again. So hopefully they add some image stabilization to the turret. As far as attack aircrafts go, Russia has the Su-57 Felon jet, and the US has the F-35E Panther jet. Now again, for the sake of game balance, and it's potato, it's virtually the same thing, just visually different. Both come equipped with a big ass ratatata gun, and both come equipped with locking anti-air missiles. Now as far as the attack helicopters go, Russia has the KA-520, and the US has the AH-64GX Apache Warchief. Both come equipped with a passenger operated cannon, their own free fire rockets, and of course, a locking anti-air missile. Extremely responsive and very agile, they're quite good for mowing down hordes of infantry. And they're definitely not shy of taking out the vehicle or two as well. As far as your transport aircrafts go, in brackets transport aircrafts, I more refer to them as a support aircraft. They don't really feel like a transport aircraft, especially when there's no actual transporting happening most of the time. As far as for your more smaller helicopter, and I'd say it's actually, I think better is too strong of a word, but it's actually more practical than the large attack helicopters are. If you're just looking to take out infantry and some of the smaller vehicles, both teams will have the MD-540 Nightbird. Extremely agile, very fast, can fit pretty much anywhere you want it to, comes equipped with miniguns and free fire rockets. This thing absolutely devastates infantry. And if you can hit your shots, it devastates other helicopters as well. If you want to stop their ground vehicles, especially the lighter ones, this thing makes an absolute mess of any scout vehicle. So let's move on to the big boys. For Russia, you have the Mi-240 Superhind. Now this is more of what you think about when they're saying transport vehicles. The problem is they don't do much transporting. Yes, it can be quite deadly when it's got a full team in it, but if you want to drop people behind enemy lines, it makes a pretty decent transport vehicle as well. The US on the other hand will have the MV-38 Condor, basically the Osprey on crack. Oh, you want to hover and devastate infantry on top of a rooftop? Well, that's no problem because you can do that. Oh, time to turn into a plane and just gap it? Yep, sure, no problem, we can do that as well. Very fast, and if your gunners are good, this thing is legitimately terrifying. As long as you're getting backed up with anti-air and you control the rooftop, you are going to have an absolute field day with this thing. There's nowhere infantry can hide that they ain't going to get mowed down. If you see this thing coming, it is actually terrifying. That pretty much leads us to the end where I'm going to give my overall thoughts. Now, number one, I think it goes without saying, but there are some people out there that just can't seem to see this, and it's important to remember it is a beta. And yes, I know it might be easy to say that they're pretty close to a finished product, and maybe they are, but for the sake of not talking yourself into hating the game already, just remember it is a beta. Things are going to change. This is what the beta is for, to sort of gauge everyone's reaction. And it's also important to remember is that we're testing their game. They're not building our game. Even my own opinion should be taken with a grain of salt, and if I don't like it when they bring it out, I can always go play something else. No developer should have to cater to their audience or big influencers or anything like that. Yes, I know there are some that do. Yes, they should try to keep the player base happy, of course, but at the same time they should stay true to the original dream they had for the game. What are some of my overall thoughts of it though? I don't hate it, I don't love it, I'm not really sure. So many times when I've been playing it, I've had to think to myself, am I even playing Battlefield? Like at times, especially with the DM7, it feels a lot like Apex. And then there's times where I'm running around and I can slide cancel, and like mobility is insanely quick for a Battlefield game. I've also got an extremely fast sniper. I feel like I'm playing Warzone. And if I had to say with the grapple, I'd say that reminds me more of Titanfall. The vehicles I think feel pretty much the same. The scout vehicles might feel a little bit more Halo type vehicle, but I don't feel like the tanks feel exactly out of the realm of Battlefield type vehicles. So overall, I'd say it's sort of going through an identity crisis, I guess. It's like it's not sure what it is, but I don't think it's that's causing it. I think it's trying to modernize the shooters, because you can only do so much with like old gen shooters. Like you can only redo the same war that's happened so many times before people have had enough of it. And I think it's going to be difficult for them, because no matter what they do, people are going to complain about it. It's just how people are. If they do a modern shooter, people will complain that they want a little bit older, a little bit more primitive. If they do an older shooter, people will bitch and complain there's not enough in the game, there's not enough attachments, there's not enough unlockables, there's not enough things to do. And it's like, because there was limited things. Like I don't hate it, it feels like it's just becoming a little bit too casual and a little bit too arcadey. I know I'm going to get grilled for using that word, but that's just how it feels to me. Like by no means have they ever been tactical shooters in the past, but this one just feels different. Which kind of brings me to my next point. I would have liked to see it be a little bit more gritty, and perhaps a little bit more tactical as well. Like yeah, I know that they haven't been tactical shooters in the past, but this one feels like it's leaning a lot more towards the more casual style. And I can see what they're doing. They're trying to steal the fan base of Warzone essentially, and probably Call of Duty in general. Because let's face it, it's a game that the casual person can pick up and enjoy it. So I can see why they're leaning that way, but it's not like tactical shooters haven't popped off or anything like that, even on console, because console recently got Insurgency Sandstorm, which has been around on PC for a little bit now. And like that's not as in-depth as Squad or as in-depth as EFT or anything like that, but there are elements to it that are a lot more tactical and gritty that make it fun. It makes people want to play as a team. So this one you just had to know was coming. I know some people aren't going to like the idea of it, but at least hear me out. Limiting the amount of AAs or locking missiles in general. Like yeah, I understand the helicopter absolutely must have locking missiles, and sure, the jets can have them too, but I really don't feel like every second person needs to have locking anti-air missiles that they can literally throw on the ground one after the other and just keep firing, keep tracking you until your flares run out. It just doesn't seem balanced. So rather than see them reduce the range of the AAs, because I feel like they should have a good range, otherwise people are just going to hover way up and shoot down. I feel like limiting the amount of them would be the way to go. The next thing I'd like to see, I mentioned throughout the video as well, is squad expansion. I feel like it should come up to 5. I don't feel like it's a big problem now that anyone can play any role. So I really don't feel like it'd be a big issue to have 5 people in a squad instead of 4, and that way I wouldn't have to have one person sit out. And I know that I'm not the only one that feels this way, because I've got friends that also play in groups, and some of them were pretty open to the idea of having 5. I feel like 5's a good number. Another thing I wouldn't mind seeing, since that they've named some of the vehicles on here as transport vehicles, give a transport bonus, like in armor. Like one of the things in armor is you start off and your headquarters or your main starting point is a mile away from the objective, literally. And if you transport people to it via a helicopter or via a ground transport vehicle and they jump out, you get some XP for it. I don't see what the harm would be in adding that to the game here as well. That'd encourage people to actually drop people behind enemy lines, carry people to objectives. I feel like Battlefield should try to move towards more team play, and little things like that can make a difference. But otherwise, that's my opinions on everything. I'm sure there's things that I've missed, but it wasn't meant to be a super in-depth analysis or anything like that. There's other channels out there for that. I'm not here for that. I'm just trying to give my thoughts and my opinions on it. Overall, it's going to be a pretty interesting game, but it's still going to need a little bit of polish, and that's what a beta is for. So it is important that we remember it is a beta, and be patient. And that's all I've really got to say. So until the next video, guys, I shall see you later.